The coffee had gone cold in my hands 3 hours ago. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone, willing it to ring. It had been 5 days since I'd last seen my wife, and the silence was suffocating. It started on a Tuesday morning. She'd kissed me goodbye, told me she was meeting her sister for lunch, and walked out the door with her purse slung over her shoulder. That was the last normal moment of my life. By 8 p.m., when she hadn't returned any of my calls or texts, I knew something was wrong. My wife was many things, but she always answered her phone. Always. I called her sister first. "What do you mean lunch?" Rebecca had said, confusion thick in her voice. "We didn't have plans today. I haven't talked to her in over a week." The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. I called her best friend, her co-workers, even her mother who lived 2 states away. Nothing. No one had seen her or heard from her. Her car was gone. Her phone went straight to voicemail. It was as if she'd simply vanished into thin air. By midnight that first night, I was at the police station filing a missing person report. The officer, a weathered man with tired eyes, took down all the information with practiced efficiency. "Most adults who go missing turn up within 48 hours, he'd said, trying to be reassuring. Usually just a misunderstanding or they needed some space. But I knew my wife. This wasn't normal. This wasn't her needing space. We'd had our problems, what couple married for 12 years didn't, but we talked through things. She wouldn't just leave without a word. The next 4 days blurred into a nightmare. I barely slept, jumping at every sound, checking my phone every few minutes. The police were investigating, but I could see the skepticism in their eyes when they interviewed me the second time. I became that statistic, that husband who's always the first suspect when a wife goes missing. I hired a private investigator on day 3, a sharp woman named Sarah who came highly recommended. "I need you to find my wife," I told her, my voice breaking. "I need to know she's safe." Sarah had been thorough, pulling phone records, checking security footage, interviewing neighbors. And that's when things started to get strange. She found footage of my wife at a hotel downtown, checking in alone on that Tuesday afternoon. She'd paid cash. The next day, there was footage of her at a shopping mall, laughing with someone the camera didn't catch. She looked fine. More than fine, she looked happy. My terror began morphing into something else. Confusion. Hurt. And then, slowly, anger. Sarah dug deeper. She found social media messages my wife had deleted, conversations with an old college friend who'd recently moved back to town. Nothing overtly romantic, but the tone was familiar, intimate. Plans to meet up. Inside jokes. Hours of phone calls I knew nothing about. By day 4, I'd made some calls of my own. I spoke with our lawyer, a family friend who'd handled our will and estate planning. Just hypothetically, I'd asked, if I needed to protect our assets, what would that look like? The lawyer had been quiet for a moment. "Are you sure about this?" I wasn't sure about anything anymore. But I knew one thing, if my wife had chosen to disappear, if she'd let me suffer through 5 days of hell thinking she was dead in a ditch somewhere, there would be consequences. On day 5, I'd finished the paperwork. The house, which had been in both our names, was now solely in mine, a legal maneuver that took advantage of an estate planning clause we'd set up years ago. The joint accounts were frozen, pending investigation of suspicious activity. I'd documented everything, given Sarah full authorization to continue her investigation, and prepared myself for whatever came next. I didn't expect her to just walk through the front door, key in hand, like she'd been out grocery shopping. But that's exactly what she did. The sound of the key in the lock made my heart stop. For 5 days, I'd been praying to hear that sound. Now that it was happening, I felt nothing but a cold, spreading numbness. The door swung open, and there she was. My wife. Completely unharmed, not a hair out of place, wearing clothes I didn't recognize and carrying a designer shopping bag I definitely hadn't paid for. She walked into our home, my home, now, though she didn't know it yet, with the casual confidence of someone who'd been gone for an afternoon, not nearly a week. But it was her face that stopped me cold. That smirk. That self-satisfied, almost challenging expression that said she knew exactly what she'd done and felt completely justified in doing it. "You're home," I said, my voice flat. I didn't move from the kitchen table. Didn't rush to embrace her. Didn't demand to know where she'd been. I just watched her, this woman I'd been married to for 12 years, who suddenly seemed like a complete stranger. She set down her shopping bag and crossed her arms, that smirk deepening. "Don't look so shocked. I needed some time to myself." "Is that a crime?" "Time to yourself," I repeated slowly. "You needed time to yourself." "Yes," she said, walking further into the kitchen, opening the refrigerator like this was any normal day. "God, you're so dramatic. I'm allowed to have my own life, you know. I don't have to report my every movement to you." I felt something inside me harden, like cement setting. "You've been gone for 5 days. And..." She grabbed a bottle of water, twisted off the cap. "You survived, didn't you? Honestly, you should be grateful I even came back. The way you've been suffocating me lately, texting me constantly, always wanting to know where I am and what I'm doing. I needed space." Grateful. She wanted me to be grateful. I thought about the nights I'd spent awake, imagining her hurt, scared, alone. The hours I'd spent at the police station, being interrogated like a suspect. The shame of having to tell our families, our friends, that my wife was missing. The private investigators' fees. The lawyers' consultations. The sheer, crushing weight of not knowing. And she wanted gratitude. "Where were you?" I asked quietly. She waved her hand dismissively. "Around. I stayed at a hotel, did some shopping, caught up with an old friend. I just needed to remember who I was before I became someone's wife, someone's employee, someone's daughter. Is that really so hard to understand?" "You could have told me." "Why?" She leaned against the counter, studying her nails. "So you could talk me out of it? So you could make me feel guilty? I knew exactly what would happen. You'd get all clingy and emotional, and I'd end up staying home to make you feel better. Well, I'm tired of living my life for everyone else." I stood up slowly, pulling out my phone. "Did you check your email today?" She frowned, her confidence flickering slightly. "No." "Why?" "You might want to." I set my phone down, keeping my voice steady. "You should have several messages from our bank. And one from David." David was our lawyer. Her frown deepened. "What are you talking about?" "I filed a missing person report on Tuesday night," I said. "When you didn't come home. When your sister said she hadn't seen you. When no one knew where you were. The police opened an investigation." The smirk was fading now, replaced by something that looked like irritation. "Oh, please. You didn't need to involve the police. That's so embarrassing." "Is it?" I tilted my head. I thought my wife was missing. Possibly dead. What was I supposed to do? Just assume you decided to take an impromptu vacation without telling anyone? "You're being ridiculous." But her voice had lost some of its certainty. "I also hired a private investigator," I continued, watching her face carefully. "On Wednesday. She's been very thorough. Would you like to know what she found?" The color drained from her face. "You hired a private investigator? To follow me?" "To find you," I corrected. "Because I thought you were missing. You were, weren't you? Missing. Gone. Vanished without a trace or a word." She opened her mouth, closed it again. The shopping bag suddenly seemed to catch her attention, and she picked it up defensively. "You had no right." "I had every right," I cut her off, my voice hard now. "You're my wife. You disappeared. Sarah found some very interesting things. Hotel receipts. Shopping sprees paid for in cash. Security footage from Tuesday afternoon showing you checking into a downtown hotel. Alone. Smiling." She stepped back, hitting the counter. "I don't have to explain myself to you." "Actually," I said, "you might have to explain yourself to a judge." The word judge hung in the air between us like a guillotine blade. I watched my wife's face cycle through emotions, confusion, disbelief, anger, and finally, the first glimmer of genuine fear. "What the hell are you talking about?" She set down the water bottle with a sharp crack. "A judge. Have you lost your mind?" I pulled out the chair across from me and gestured to it. "Sit down. We need to talk." "I'm not sitting down. I just got home, and you're threatening me with what, exactly? What judge?" "Sit down." Something in my voice must have gotten through to her because she moved to the chair, though she perched on the edge like she might bolt at any moment. I pulled out the folder I'd kept on the table for the past 2 days and opened it. "These are bank statements," I began, sliding the first set of papers across to her. "Our joint checking account. Our savings. The credit cards in both our names. Notice anything different?" She snatched up the papers, scanning them. I watched the exact moment comprehension hit. Her eyes widened. "These accounts are frozen." "Why are the accounts frozen?" "Suspicious activity," I said calmly. "When a person goes missing, and there's evidence they may have been planning to drain marital assets, protective measures can be taken. Our lawyer filed the paperwork on Thursday." "Drain marital assets?" Her voice rose. "I was taking a few days for myself." "Were you?" I pulled out another document. "This is a cash withdrawal you made on Monday, the day before you disappeared. $5,000. Can you tell me what that was for?" She paled. "That's none of your business." "Everything in that account is my business. It's a joint account. You withdrew $5,000 in cash and didn't tell me. Then you vanished the next day. What was I supposed to think?" "I don't have to justify my spending to you." "Actually, you do. That's how joint accounts work. That's how marriage works." I pulled out more papers. "But here's what really interests me. These are records Sarah obtained through her investigation. Hotel stays. Restaurants. Shopping. You spent $8,000 in 5 days." Her hands trembled as she looked at the evidence. "You had someone spying on me." "I had someone searching for my missing wife," I corrected. "There's a difference." And what she found was very enlightening. "Should we talk about the phone records?" "Stop it." Her voice was barely a whisper now. I pulled out the phone records anyway. Hundreds of texts and calls to a number I didn't recognize. Hours of conversations. All deleted from your visible message history, but phone companies keep records. The number belongs to someone named Derek. Derek Patterson. Your friend from college who moved back to town 6 months ago. She stood abruptly, the chair screeching against the floor. "Nothing happened with Derek. We're just friends." "Friends you lied to me about," I said, standing as well. "Friends you spent hours talking to in secret. Friends you saw on Tuesday when you told me you were meeting your sister. Should I play the voicemail you left him? The one Sarah obtained? The one where you told him you were finally free for a few days and couldn't wait to just be us?" Her face crumpled. "You don't understand. Derek and I, we have a connection. A real connection. He understands me in ways you never have." "So you thought you'd just disappear for 5 days to explore that connection," I said. "Without telling me. Without thinking about how I'd feel. Without considering that I might call the police. That there might be consequences. I was going to come back." "Were you?" I pulled out the final document. "Because this is a text message you sent to Derek on Wednesday night. I don't know if I can go back to that life. To him. These few days have shown me what I've been missing. Does that sound like someone planning to come back?" She sank back into the chair, her face in her hands. "I was confused. I am confused. Derek makes me feel alive again. But I wasn't going to just leave. I have a life here. A home." "About that," I said, sliding the final document across the table. "This is the deed to the house." She looked up, wiping her eyes. "What about it? Notice anything missing? Your name, specifically." She grabbed the paper, staring at it in disbelief. "What did you do?" We set up our estate with a survivorship clause, I explained. In the event one of us was presumed dead or incapacitated, everything transfers automatically to the surviving spouse. When you went missing, our lawyer activated that clause. This house is now solely in my name. You can't do that. I'm not dead. But you were missing, I said. And according to the police report, the private investigator's findings, and the evidence I've compiled, there's reason to believe you abandoned the marriage. That changes things legally. She stood again, backing toward the door. This is insane. You can't just take everything because I needed a few days away. I'm not taking everything, I said quietly. I'm protecting myself. Because the woman who walked through that door 20 minutes ago isn't my wife. My wife wouldn't have smirked at me. Wouldn't have told me to be grateful she came back. Wouldn't have spent 5 days letting me think she was dead while she played house with an old flame. Derek and I didn't. We're not. She couldn't seem to finish the sentence. It doesn't matter, I said, and I meant it. Whether you slept with him or not, you chose him over me. Over our marriage. You chose to disappear without a word. To let me suffer. And then you had the audacity to walk back in here like you were doing me a favor. She slumped against the wall, all the bravado draining from her body like water from a broken vessel. For the first time since she'd walked through the door, she looked truly afraid. Not afraid of me. I'd never given her reason to fear me physically, but afraid of what she'd done. Afraid of the consequences she'd never bothered to consider. I want to call David, she said, her voice small. Our lawyer. I want to know if what you're saying is legal. Go ahead, I said, gesturing to her purse. But he won't take your call. He's my lawyer now. Conflict of interest. You'll need to find your own representation. She stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. Your lawyer? David has been our lawyer for 10 years. And now he's mine. I retained him on Wednesday when it became clear this wasn't a simple missing person case. He advised me on every step I've taken. I moved to the coffee maker, needing something to do with my hands. You should also know that I've documented everything. Every phone call to the police. Every conversation with Sarah. Every hour I spent terrified that something had happened to you. Why? The question came out as almost a sob. Why are you doing this? I turned to face her, and for the first time in 5 days, I felt something close to clarity. Because you destroyed my life for 5 days and thought I should be grateful you came back to finish the job. Because you manipulated me, lied to me, and made me into the frantic, suspicious husband while you played at some fantasy life with Derek. Because I deserve better than this. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing her makeup. I didn't mean for it to go like this. I just needed time to think. Derek and I ran into each other at that coffee shop in September, and we started talking, and he reminded me of who I used to be. Before the mortgage and the routines and the same conversations every night. He made me feel young again. Exciting. So you thought you'd just check out of our marriage for a test run? I poured coffee I didn't want. See if the grass was greener. Yes. No. I don't know. She moved to the table, sitting down heavily. Do you even remember the last time you really looked at me? Really saw me? We've been going through the motions for months. Maybe years. When was the last time we did anything spontaneous? When was the last time you surprised me? When was the last time you asked me to? I shot back. Marriage is a two-way street. If you were unhappy, we could have talked about it. We could have gone to counseling. We could have taken a vacation, changed our routines, done anything except what you did. You would have said counseling was too expensive. You would have said you couldn't take time off work for a vacation. Her voice was bitter. You would have made me feel guilty for even asking. I set down the coffee cup carefully, fighting to keep my voice level. Is that really what you think of me? That I'm some kind of controlling monster who wouldn't want to fix our marriage? She looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time since she'd come home. I think we've both been pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. I think we stopped being partners and started being roommates who shared a bed. And I think I handled it in the worst possible way. You think? The laugh that escaped me was harsh. You disappeared for 5 days. I filed a police report. I hired a private investigator. I called everyone we know, terrified you were hurt or dead. I barely slept. I couldn't eat. I imagined every horrible scenario. And you were at a hotel, shopping, laughing with Derek, feeling alive. So yes, you handled it badly. I'm sorry. The words sounded hollow. I know I hurt you. I felt trapped. Like I was suffocating. And Derek represented this escape, this chance to be someone other than the woman who pays bills and goes to work and comes home to watch TV. Then you should have left, I said quietly. Properly. With honesty. You should have sat me down and told me you were unhappy. That you wanted out. That you'd met someone else. Instead, you tortured me. And then you walked in here smirking like I was the problem. She winced. That was wrong. The smirking. The attitude. I was defensive. I knew what I'd done was terrible, and I couldn't face it, so I tried to make it your fault. Make it seem like you were overreacting. I wasn't overreacting, I said. I was reacting exactly as any reasonable person would when their spouse vanishes without a trace. We sat in silence for a long moment. The house settled around us. All the familiar creaks and sounds that used to feel comforting now just felt empty. What happens now? She asked finally. With the house, the accounts, everything. I pulled out my phone and opened the email from Sarah. That depends on you. The private investigator's report is complete. She's documented your movements for all 5 days. The hotels. The restaurants where you and Derek had dinner. The shopping trips. There's even security footage from the mall on Wednesday where you two were holding hands. Her face flushed. It wasn't. We didn't. It doesn't matter what you did or didn't do, I interrupted. What matters is what this looks like. Abandonment. Possible infidelity. Misuse of marital assets. If we end up in divorce court, I have documentation of everything. You're divorcing me. It wasn't a question. Are you giving me a reason not to? I asked. Because from where I'm sitting, you made your choice when you deleted Derek's messages. When you withdrew $5,000 in cash. When you told your lover you didn't know if you could come back to your life with me. She was crying now, really crying, her shoulders shaking. I made a mistake. A huge, terrible mistake. But I came back. That has to count for something. You came back because your vacation was over, I said. Not because you missed me. Not because you realized what you'd done. You came back because the fantasy had an expiration date, and real life was waiting. That's not fair. Fair. The word tasted bitter. You want to talk about fair? Here's what's fair. I protected our assets. I documented everything. I made sure that whatever happens next, I'm not left financially destroyed on top of emotionally devastated. That's fair. The kitchen clock ticked loudly in the silence that followed. Outside, I could hear someone mowing their lawn, the sound absurdly normal against the wreckage of our marriage scattered across the kitchen table. My wife, I still thought of her that way, though I wasn't sure for how much longer, sat with her head in her hands, her tears soaking into the legal documents that now defined our relationship. I need you to understand something, I said finally, my voice softer than it had been. Not gentle, I wasn't ready for gentle, but without the sharp edge of anger. Anger took energy I no longer had. These past 5 days changed me. I can't unknow what I know now. I can't unfeel what I felt. She looked up, her face blotchy and swollen. What do you mean? I sat down across from her, suddenly exhausted. I mean that when you walked out that door on Tuesday, you didn't just disappear physically. You destroyed something. Trust. Maybe. Security. The foundation of everything I thought we'd built together. And when you walked back in with that smirk, telling me to be grateful you came back, you showed me exactly how little you value what we had. Had, she repeated. Past tense. Can you give me a reason to use present tense? I asked. Because I've spent the last hour laying out everything you've done, everything you've destroyed, and you've given me explanations and excuses, but not a single real reason to believe anything would be different going forward. She wiped her face with a napkin from the table. What would that look like? A real reason? I don't know, I admitted. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe we're so far gone that I can't even imagine what would make this fixable. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at the documents spread between us. Derek called me this morning, she said finally. Asked when he'd see me again. When I'd leave you for good and we could start our real life together. My stomach twisted, but I kept my face neutral. What did you tell him? Nothing. I didn't answer. She looked at me, her eyes red but clear. I realized this morning that Derek doesn't actually want me. Not really. He wants the fantasy version of me. The one who's spontaneous and carefree and has no responsibilities. But that's not who I am. I have a career I've built for 15 years. I have friends here. Family. A life. Derek wants to take me away from all of that. Start fresh somewhere new where I'd be completely dependent on him. And that scared you, I said. It terrified me. Because I realized I'd been so focused on escaping what I saw as a cage that I was about to walk into an actual one. She twisted her wedding ring, still on her finger, I noticed. But that doesn't change what I did to you. And I don't know how to fix it. Maybe you can't, I said. Maybe some things, once broken, can't be put back together. Is that what you want? Her voice cracked. For this to be over. I leaned back in my chair, feeling every one of my 43 years. What I want is to not have spent 5 days in hell. What I want is to not have called your mother, crying, thinking you were dead. What I want is to not have hired a private investigator who found evidence of my wife holding hands with another man. But I don't get what I want. None of us do. So what do we do? I gathered the papers, tapping them into a neat stack. Here's what's going to happen. The accounts stay frozen for now. The house stays in my name until we figure out what comes next. You're going to get your own lawyer, David can recommend someone, and we're going to have an honest conversation about whether this marriage has any chance of survival. You're giving me a chance. There was hope in her voice, fragile as spun glass. I'm giving us both time, I corrected. Time to think clearly. Time for you to decide if you want to be married to me, or if you just don't want to lose the assets. Time for me to decide if I can ever trust you again, or if every time you're 5 minutes late, I'll be wondering if you've run off with Derek or whoever comes next. She flinched. I deserve that. You deserve a lot of things right now, I said. But spite isn't going to help either of us. I stood up, suddenly needing space from the table, from the documents, from her. Sarah's investigation is complete, but I have her on retainer. Not to follow you, I'm not interested in that level of paranoia, but to finalize her report and make sure everything's documented properly. If we decide to divorce, it'll be straightforward. If we decide to try to work through this. I trailed off. Then what? Then we'll need counseling. Real, intensive marriage counseling. You'll need to cut off all contact with Derek. Permanently. No goodbye coffee, no closure conversation, nothing. You'll need to be completely transparent about your phone, your email, your whereabouts. And honestly, I don't know if even all of that will be enough. She stood too, wrapping her arms around herself. That sounds like a lot of rules. Those aren't rules, I said. Those are the bare minimum requirements for me to even consider trusting you again. You broke something fundamental. If you want any chance of fixing it, you don't get to complain about the terms. And what will you do? She asked. While I'm jumping through all these hoops. I'll work on forgiving you, I said simply. Or deciding that I can't. I'll figure out if the woman I married is still in there somewhere, or if she's been replaced by someone I don't recognize. I'll try to understand how we got here, what I might have missed, what I could have done differently. You didn't do anything wrong, she said quickly. This wasn't your fault. Maybe not, I agreed. But marriages don't fall apart in a vacuum. I may not have vanished for 5 days, but I apparently checked out enough that you felt justified in doing it. That's worth examining. She moved toward me, then stopped when I stepped back. The hurt on her face was evident, but I couldn't help it. I wasn't ready to be touched, to be comforted, to pretend any of this was okay. Can I stay here tonight? She asked. In the guest room, I mean. I don't have anywhere else to go. I considered saying no, making her find a hotel like she'd done for the past 5 days. But spite really wouldn't help. Guest room, I agreed. Door closed. And tomorrow, you start looking for a therapist. We both do. Whether we're looking for marriage counselors or divorce attorneys, we need professional help to navigate this. She nodded, picking up her shopping bag. Thank you. For not just throwing me out. Don't thank me, I said. This isn't kindness. This is me trying to make rational decisions instead of emotional ones. Tomorrow, when I'm less numb, I might regret it. She walked toward the stairs, then paused. The smirk, when I came in. That wasn't confidence. It was defense. I knew what I'd done was indefensible, and I thought if I acted like it was no big deal, maybe you'd just let it go. Maybe we could pretend it never happened. We can't pretend, I said. That's over. Whatever happens next, it happens in reality, with honesty. I'm done with pretending everything's fine when it's not. She nodded and disappeared up the stairs. I heard the guest room door close with a soft click. I stood alone in the kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of her betrayal and my methodical response to it. The house felt different now, not like home, but like a museum of what we used to be. Maybe it would feel like home again someday. Maybe we'd rebuild something new on the ruins of what had been destroyed. Or maybe this was the beginning of the end, just drawn out with lawyers and mediators and the civilized dissolution of 12 years together. I honestly didn't know which outcome I was hoping for anymore. What I did know was that I'd never again be the man who waited in terror for 5 days, hoping against hope that his wife would come home safely. That man had died somewhere between Tuesday and today. In his place was someone harder, more careful, someone who understood that love without respect was just another word for suffering. And I was done suffering. I picked up my phone and sent a message to Sarah, letting her know her services might be needed ongoing. Then I texted David, asking about marriage counselors who specialized in infidelity and abandonment. Finally, I opened the message to my wife's mother that I'd been drafting in my head. She's home safe, I typed. Thank you for your support these past few days. We have a lot to work through, but at least the not knowing is over. I hit send before I could second guess it. The not knowing was over. That part, at least, was true. But the knowing, the living with what I now knew, what I documented, what I couldn't forget, that was just beginning. I poured out the cold coffee and made a fresh pot. It was going to be a long night, and probably an even longer tomorrow. But for the first time in 5 days, I felt like I was standing on solid ground. I'd protected myself. I'd prepared for every outcome. I'd refused to be the grateful, forgiving fool she'd apparently expected. Whatever happened next, I'd face it with my eyes open, my assets protected, and my dignity intact. And if she wanted to be part of my future, she'd have to earn it. One honest conversation at a time.